What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 10 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today we're going to be continuing on with our neck work where we left off yesterday, or excuse me, I should say last week's episode. In episode 9, we're going to start filling in the sides after we got the backbone done. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it. And we're going to be doing two steps here. You can see that I'm going off of going one down and one in, and I'm building two out. And then off of that, I'm going to do a blue line going straight across to the other side. The reason I'm doing this is because I need a starting point, and I want to make sure that they match on both sides as we're going to do our incline. So now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. There should be one block gap right there. And we're not going to go, as we're going inward and down, we're not going to go anything past this blue line right here, because we're going to have a cut point right here. Because this is going to be a two-part process. We're going to be building out the back piece here, and then we also have to start building out the front of the neck, and the neck curves in a certain way on the Enterprise D. That we actually have to build four separate pieces for it if you count the backbone. That's the backbone, the back sides, regular sides, and then the front of the neck. So technically 4 pieces all together in order to build this out. So once we get rocking to this point, it's pretty much straight cut and dry. We're just going to be going at an incline, at an angle, one in and down, and making sure to stop at the same line as the blue. You notice the last couple of rows here, there's going to be a 1 or 2 block gap. That's okay up here. And as we get further down, there's not going to be a gap. We're probably at some point going to be coming back and doing some more work on the sides of the neck and the back. If I had the opportunity to build the Enterprise D again, I'm not going to lie, I probably would have started off with the sides here, because I might have had an easier time with doing my backbone if I at least built the sides out. But it was kind of just one of those things where didn't necessarily know what the process was going to be until I tried to do it. So that's something I'm definitely going to take into consideration. Like I said, I don't know if I'll ever do another Galaxy class ship, but if I do one like it, or it has the same neck, now I have the process to get that down packed. And the whole thing that we're trying to convey right here is that it kind of slopes inward, and it really is not going to start to curve until we get a little bit more forward where we have our blue line here, which we're also going to tackle a little bit. Now when we get to that part, that, believe it or not, is going to be pretty easy. And I'm going to build out everything that you see me doing right here. I'm going to do this left side and then also the right side. I'm doing this live because as we get a little bit further down, there's going to be a little bit more of a gap, and I'm going to show you what I did to get around that. So it's not so cut and dry like the other parts. Like I said, gonna definitely try to save time where I can on this build, like we did with the saucer when possible, when there's so much repetition. But because of the gaps that we're going to ultimately hit as we're going down with the curve here, we're not going to have any choice other than I feel it's just better to build this part out live, so this way you can see exactly what I'm doing. It would also help if you could actually see it. So let's throw in some lights. But see, not so much right there, but right here that blends in really well. Doesn't look bad. We got kind of a long video today. I think we're just under 29 minutes. Might end up going just over a half hour with talking points over it, but we'll see. I wanted to get as much into this episode as I possibly could, but I really don't want to go over a half hour unless I absolutely have to. But the neck, like I said, it's 4 parts that we're essentially building, so it's going to be a little bit of a process to get us there. But hopefully it won't be too bad. I got you guys, and even the stuff I'm doing today as I'm doing it, if you get stuck, if you have questions, drop a comment below. I'll try to see if I can help you out. But I've been trying to do this at a little bit of a slower pace so you can keep up with me, and I don't foresee anybody having problems with the 2 steps that I'm going to be doing today. I think it'll be pretty easy. You see, at this point, we're getting to a point where I'm building off the very bottom row as we transition downward. The last block in the bottom row. So that looks pretty good. You can start to envision we're going to have a ton of room in here to build out a whole bunch of stuff. And this is what I mean by the bottom row right here, building off that last block on that row. Kind of hard to mess that up. As long as you stay on that, you should be good. So this is where I was talking about where there's going to be a tiny gap, or if you're going to be faced with a similar situation. I just again went off the last block. The only thing I don't like there is it's kind of looking blocky on the edges there, but we're going to come back and clean that up a little bit. Now off this, we're going to be going off of the last block facing us. Actually, no, I messed that up. No, we're going to be keeping the same pattern that we had before. Last block's that bottom one right there. Then you go down one, all the way to the last one. Alright. Now we're rocking. Yeah, it's looking a little bit boxy on the sides here, but we'll clean that up. I think at this point, the main focus is to get the shape intact, and then once we have our shape, we can start editing it to get it to look exactly how we want. Especially with this build, the Enterprise D, there's definitely going to be a little bit of a trial and error period, you know? I've never built a Galaxy class before, let alone a ship this big in Minecraft or any builder game that involves blocks. This is hands down the biggest build I have ever done. And I was a little bit afraid of it when I first started it because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull it off. But I had a lot of positive feedback regarding the full teaser, the Enterprise D. That's definitely giving you a really good scope of what the finished ship is going to look like, even though a ton of the detailing hasn't been done on it. But the shape of it is there. And that's really all that you need to get this thing going. Not one piece by itself is really going to be a deciding factor when we start adding in all these elements together and just doing it step by step by step by step. Eventually, everything is going to fall into place. So we're almost done with this right side, or excuse me, I should say this left side, and we're going to hop over to the right side and repeat the same process that we just did on this side. Even though this seems kind of cut and dry, still I decided it was a good idea to do this live. Because I felt like, I had a feeling it was going to happen, that some people were probably going to have some issues with this, because you can even see as I was doing this, I kind of stopped a couple of times and had to I second guessed myself and had to like check my work to making sure I was doing the right thing. So I could definitely see where some people could have an issue with this. But the step that we do after this, after we get the right side done, is going to be a little bit easier. And it's really going to, the pattern I came up with is really going to help to sell the curve of the neck. You can see I'm not counting these out, I'm just going up to my cut line because this is exactly where the blue line that the builder line that we had above us, it's exactly where that line stopped. So I can take advantage of that and build a little bit faster and try to save us a little bit of time in getting this done. All right, and we're done on this side. So you get an idea of what that piece is going to look like, somewhat finished, at least for today's episode. Now you can see I'm going to go back on the backbone, and I'm going to bring these half slabs all the way over just to see if it's going to do anything. But I think ultimately I'm going to end up going back to what I had before I made this change. I won't be able to do this on the right side just yet. Now we're going to have to repeat the same process that we just had. So we're going to start off with our first row right here, going in one right off of this block, going at an angle. And for this portion, we're going off the last block facing us. Eventually, as we go down, we're going to be going to the last block above us. As long as you follow those two steps, shouldn't have any issues with this so far. Should be pretty good. It's actually kind of hard to believe that we're already on episode 10 of this tutorial, and we've got a long way to go. We've got a ton of work to do on this thing before we're going to be able to call this done. I'm still in the beginning part of doing my interior and haven't even finished detailing all the outside of the ship yet. There's just so many pieces to take into consideration on this build, and it's taken a little bit of research on my part to find all that stuff that's going to go into it. Because I am going to try to stay as true as I possibly can to the Enterprise D as possible. So we're looking pretty good so far. We're going to continue on with our slope. Again, we're not making sure not to go past our blue line. That's our marker. Now we've hit the level where we're going off the last block above us. And if you're not sure on your build, you just have to make sure that you have this cut maintained. So it may not, your build may not end up exactly the way mine is. So if that's the case, just make sure that your slope is intact and you make your transition from the back one to the top one whenever you're ready to. But now since we kind of got the method down on this side, I can do it a little bit faster than what we did on the other side. Before we get too far, let's add another light. We're rocking. Got a couple more rows to do. Still got about 15 minutes into today's episode, so still got a little bit more work to do today. But all things considered, the amount of work that we've put into this thus far, I'm pretty happy with the progress that we're making. I don't know if anybody can build an Enterprise D this size or bigger within just a couple of videos. It's going to be kind of a long one. I don't know how many episodes it's going to end up on. We'll have to just wait and see how that ends up. But it could very well end up being more than I've ever done for any tutorial. I can definitely see that happening. But then again, it may not. I don't know. We'll just have to kind of play it by ear as we go. I think we'll have a better idea of how many episodes this is going to end up on once we start getting to the interior portion of the build. So remember, we had this problem before, so we're going to go off the too bad. We've only got a couple more rows to do. And then we can start working on the curve. And believe it or not, like, it was weird because I thought I was going to have more of a problem with the curve. And almost in the first shot, I got it right. I was actually shocked with that. Now, the very front of the neck, that's where most of the problem is going to come in. It took me, I think, 1 or 2 attempts before I got the very front of the neck to looking to the point where it was in the full trailer video that I did for this. Because it was just a pain in the butt to get it right. Because Enterprise D in the neck, it's so thin in the front and the way it curves out. It was kind of a challenge to build that out on Minecraft. That's one of the reasons why I ultimately ended up building the neck into 4 pieces. Is just to be able to pull that curve off, it took all 4 of those pieces working together to kind of make that shape come to life on Minecraft. Again, sticking by that rule, not passing our blue line. That line's very important because that's our cut line. That's where the sides of the neck are going to intersect with the curve. It may not look like much now, but it will. So if you look at it from the back, that's not looking bad. I'm still not liking those blocks right there as we go down on the sides, but it does not look bad. Needs a little bit of work, but it's definitely a step in the right direction of where we need to take this. Now, we're going to start our curve. Now, the blocks that you're seeing me add now, don't add those. I left this in just to show you guys a trial and error that I did. And they were like, I did those 2 sides, and I think I went like 4 or 5 blocks down, and I started working on a template curve. But I'll give you the spoiler of what I'm ultimately going to end up doing. This template that you're going to see me building now, we're going to scrap this. We're going to get rid of this line that I'm working on right now. And we're going to start off the front of the neck. And the reason I decided to do it that way is because I wanted them to match up perfectly. And I also wanted the starting point to be at the top of the front of the neck, because we're going to have to add more work above us in tomorrow's episode. You can see even here, having a little bit of problems. I ended up making it too long. I think I settled on 2x2. It was either 2x2 or 3x3. I can't remember off the top of my head. Everything you see me on this row that I'm adding now, don't add this. After I do this row, I'm going to come back and we're going to go off the neck, and that's where we're going to start. I definitely wanted to have this in 2 so you can kind of see the process on how I'll come up with this. You can see I did 4, I think I did 4 cut first, and that ended up being too much. So now I decided to go back and do it by 3. And it looks like that's not going to match up. See, it's because the main challenge here is to make the front here line up with this cut right here. Yeah, so now we're going down to the 2x2. I do know for a fact that is what we're going to settle on. And it kind of sucks we have to do it this way, but this is honestly the realest tutorial that I can show you guys, because this is hopefully teaching you how to size this stuff up and how to adjust your patterns. You can see that the first 2 attempts I made, it was just too much. It was going to end up passing the front of the neck, so we just gradually decreased it, cut off one block at a time, basically. And I'm fairly certain, well, I'm certain that this is going to work, but it's just the placement on it right now that's going to be the problem. So we're just going to have to slightly adjust this now, and we're going to have to start off the front of our neck to really make this work. Because right now I'm zooming out, I'm checking it out, trying to envision two things. How it's going to curve out here, going along the sides, and then the bottom piece, how that's going to curve. The very bottom row. So now this little cut indentation here, this is what we're going to start off. We're going to do 2 by 2. So now we're starting off the front of the neck. This is what I should have done to begin with, but again, it's just one of those things. You got to mess around a little bit, try to figure out what the right process is. And that's just what ended up being the case here. It's slightly off a little bit from, or excuse me, what this original row was. It was slightly off, but starting it off the neck, it's going to end up being perfect. And when it's done, it's not going to look perfect, but once we build out the front of our neck, this thing is really going to pop and look pretty awesome. I gotta be honest, after I did this neck, I went back and I looked online at other people that built Enterprise Ds. I have not seen a neck as clean as this one. All of them, they had too many just access blocks sitting on them and stuff, and you can tell they kind of did like a hodgepodge here and there to make their shape come together. And while from a distance it definitely looked like the Enterprise D, as you zoom into it, then you start noticing clusters of blocks here and clusters of blocks there, and it's not necessarily matching a pattern. Now, we're going to go back and I'm going to get rid of our old row. This was the row I told you not to build. We're going to have to make one tiny adjustment to really make this row work here. We're going to have to bring back our cut on these sides to really make that work. But for right now, let's do the right side, and we're just going to do the same thing that we did on the left side. So we're starting off the very front where that gap was, and we're just doing 2 by 2, going in with the cut, and bringing that all the way back until we line up with the sides that we just built out a moment ago. So far, so good. Got a couple more rows to do. And this is really going to be your template that what we're making right now. Both sides, the left side and the right side of these rows I'm building right now is going to be a template going all the way down. Because if you match your cuts, it's going to be impossible to make a mistake. Completely impossible. If you mess up while you're doing this, as we go row to row, you made a mistake somewhere. So now what we're going to do to make all this blend in, we're going to make a cut line going straight up and down, right where our last block meets. Because everything going forward, at least on this piece, we're going to get rid of that. So this way, this curve completely matches up with the side piece that we have built. So we're going to do the same thing on the left side. On this row right here that they're touching, the very last block, that's what we're going to get rid of. Everything going forward off this side of the V. Alright. So now let's go in, let's get rid of our access. Everything in front of that cut line that we just made, we're going to get rid of that. Obviously, the most care you want to take right now is where this part here is meeting with the front, or excuse me, the backbone of the saucer, or not the saucer, the backbone of the neck. Just want to make sure that we're going to get rid of the sides. So we're going to delete that piece there. I'm going to do that off camera because there's no sense in this sitting there watching me delete it. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and hit play. Now we're going to add our next row. Again, as long as you're minding your cut, we're doing the same exact pattern. We're just going one down. And if your cut lines don't match, you made a mistake somewhere. It needs to match exactly what we have above us. Just going one down and in one. See, I'm following along the row of what I have here. And I'm going to do this for both the left side the right side and the left side until I get all the way down to the last row. And this is your template. You're not going to build above you. Don't do that yet, because we're going to do that. We'll worry about that in tomorrow's episode. Right now, let's just build downwards. But as long as you follow the template that we just established out, it will be impossible for you to make any type of error here. It's one of the things I do like with working with patterns, because when you're working with patterns, it can help you to identify your mistakes, as opposed to when you're just throwing a shape together and you're not restricting yourself to any type of pattern. Then you're really having to finagle it a lot to come up with the shape that you want to come up with. But with this, we're pre-establishing rules that are ultimately going to work. I mean, and this doesn't always work out this way, but just over the period of time of me building ships on Minecraft, I've been able to come up with a set of patterns that work. Now, you're probably going to notice on the first row we've gone down one that there's a gap in the front by one block. Don't worry about that. As we go down row to row, you're going to notice that very first block that you're placing, the gap is going to slowly start to increase. That's good, because then it's going to start to show a cut, and you should have an angled cut by the time this is done, going straight up. Or not straight up, but at an angle going upwards. Because we're going to be using that later on when we blend in the front of our neck into the two pieces that we're building now. Now, I'm not going to build all of this live. I wanted to do enough rows so you can really get a feel for what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to have you guys do the rest of this off camera. And it's not going to, I'm telling you, it's not rocket science. Anybody can do this. You're just going to keep adding rows and following your pattern until you get down to the bottom row here, and then you stop. It'd be impossible to mess that up. Because as you go row to row, you're going to notice that your starting block is slowly going to start to make a line like this, going at an angle, until you get all the way down to your last row here, and you won't be able to go down anymore. As long as you're following that cut pattern here, you'll be good. I think I may have over-explained that a little bit, but I want to take the time to go over that, because I think if you're not careful with this, you could make a mistake. But the pattern itself is so simple that as long as you're paying attention to what you're doing, I think you'll be fine. But again, like I was saying earlier in today's episode, if you get stuck for whatever reason, you're having trouble getting this done, I would honestly suggest at this point, at least for this part, if you get stuck, rewind the video and watch back what I did. Because when I'm talking about with the cuts, you can see every single row that I'm doing, there's no double lapping on each row. It's going exactly with the cuts, every single row. You can see how this row here, there's 2 blocks with a gap. This one, there's 1. As we transition down, that's going to increase. But you're going to want to do this for both the right side and the left side, going all the way down. And once you do that, then you're going to be done for today's episode. Kind of a simple process what we did today, but just a little bit of work to get to this point. You can see more of that gap starting to show up in the front here, but it's starting to show that cut line that I was talking about. That's a great example of what it should look like as it transitions down. 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. As long as you maintain that 2 by 2 pattern, you're golden. Yeah. I think that's going to wrap us up today. So Be sure to do the left side and the right side going all the way down to your last row. I think you're actually, by the time you get all the way down, I think you're going to have this very bottom row here. You're going to stop probably, I think, at where this um, sea lantern. I believe that's where your last row is going to be, because you're gonna be out of room at that point. You're going to come right up on this transitional cut here. But that's okay. That's where we want to be, because we're going to have room to build out the front of our neck, and we'll be one step closer to having our Enterprise D done. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me today. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button. And I can't thank you enough for that. Everybody that takes the time to watch these videos and like them, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so as get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can usually catch my Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays and my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Thursdays. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.